Hello and welcome back to Magic and the Noise. Today we're doing a live stream. We have a lot of things to cover. We're going to be talking about using AI art. Why does it wreck your remote viewing and why you should not use it? And then we'll be doing target reveal feedback data for the sessions that these remote viewers have spent the last couple of weeks working on. We have Kozyrev mirrors session, and we have sessions on the disappearance of flight MH370. So before we jump in, hello everyone. I'd love you to introduce yourselves a little bit. Patrick, do you want to start? Because I'm seeing you next to me on the screen.
Okay. Hi, my name is Patrick, and I'm from Ireland. Practicing remote viewer for about 7-8 years, using mostly TRV and some HRVG. I'm also an NLP trainer and modeler, so it was kind of my coming into this was kind of looking at could I model, the kind of replicate kind of a successful example of psychic performance. So it's a work in progress.
You're muted, Sash.
I'm muted. Sorry, I was just saying thank you, Patrick. And then Chris.
Hey everyone, so my name is Chris. I'm from Belgium. I've been doing remote viewing for around 3 years now, mainly CRV and HRVG. I just started a YouTube channel, so I will post some of my sessions there, and I guess, yeah, Sasha and David can put the link somewhere later on. And I also have a website, myrvtoolbox.com, where I code some random components to play around with RV, because that's what I do in life, and just for fun I'm doing that. So you can always try it. Everything is free over there. It's just for fun, so feel free to go and check it out.
Yes. Yeah, you have a great ARV assistance on that website. So for people who are wanting to either do ARV for their own work, or if they're wanting to do the error correction protocol that David and I had talked about in a recent video, that's a really good website resource. And
Yeah.
Michael, yeah, and so thank you. And Michael?
Yeah, so I've been doing remote viewing for about 6 months to a year now. I just mostly do like a bit of a free form style of remote viewing, kind of touch and go, but I'm having fun with it. So excited to be here.
Nice.
My name is David. I'm from Arizona, United States, and I've been remote viewing for a number of years. I use TRV, HRVG, and I work with Sasha on Magic and the Noise.
Yes. Yeah, nice. And Claudia.
Hi, I'm Claudia. I'm from Amsterdam, basically Amstelveen. That's a suburb of Amsterdam. Yesterday we had the famous King's Day, hooray. And I've been doing this now for, I think, 2 years. I had a training from Sander Hilliard, and in November 2022. And well, I joined. I did not do so much on an app. I did some things, and then Patrick asked me, and Patrick van der Kerk asked me, and another attendant of that training from Sandra, to do something together. And so this is a bit bigger group, but he introduced us to this, and it's marvelous. It's marvelous. I'm very, very glad, and I love your targets. Yeah, amazing.
Thank you, Claudia. That's so kind.
So that's me.
That's you. And Jeff.
So I'm from the Chicagoland area, have been doing HRVG for a little over 2 years, and predating that, going back to when I was a kid, I would say I not always, but often had odd things happen to me, or could see things that were going to happen in the future, or help people find lost objects. And HRVG was sort of learning it was sort of my attempt at giving some structure to whatever was happening to me naturally.
Nice. I think that's one of the more interesting ways of entering into remote viewing. So I think that's interesting.
Yes, that's true, because I did a 5-year-long education for chakras and everything. And then I deliberately wanted to do this because it was a tool. It was much more easy than you could arrange it. So that's why I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice way of channeling people's raw psychic talent. Okay, so I'm going to launch the PowerPoint, and I really just want to dive into the AI, because a lot of people have been talking about this recently, and a lot of people have just automatically decided that it's a good idea to incorporate AI art into their work. And so I just want to talk a little bit about that and explore it with you. And see what we come up with in terms of, is it a good idea? Is it not a good idea? And why? I have my own opinion, but I'm looking forward to hearing yours as well. And so let me get that set up for screen sharing. Maybe this way. And yeah, some of you might be a little bit bigger on the screen. And so just keep in mind that the audience can see you.
It might be better if it's full screen, just for people who view it.
Okay, sure.
Just so the content's clearer.
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah, okay. Okay, and are you able to see my PowerPoint?
No, unfortunately, no.
Okay, and I know why, so I will fix that. I always forget to add it to the stage.
Yep, there it is.
And I'm just going to change that so that you can see something a little bit more pleasing. In the olden days, YouTube used to let you trim from in the middle of the video wherever you wanted to, but now they do not. They only let you trim the beginning or the end, so all these little mistakes get left in. Okay, are you seeing my full screen?
No, I saw it when it was more minimized, and then when you went to adjust it, it disappeared.
Is it back?
It's back now. Yes, it's taking a majority of the area.
Good. Okay, so to me, I think that this is something that really needs to be talked about. And I think we need to approach it with a lot of critical thinking. I think it's really easy to just try to incorporate new things into remote viewing without thinking about the impact it actually has. And I think especially if people don't quite understand why remote viewing works, how it works, what it is that's happening, then it's easy to overlook some of the issues that using AI art can cause in your sessions. So here, I just found this online, Mel Riley's session. He's one of the, I think, the older, well-known remote viewers. And I was looking at this and I was thinking, okay, so you have this shape and something streaming in and someone on a table underneath it. This might be good target data. It could be in a pyramid, it could be in a church, but this image you're seeing in the center here, the clock tower, that could also be the target for Mel's data. And once you put something into AI, it's going to affect your subconscious, because now you're telling your subconscious, this is what we're looking at. This is the interpretation that we're taking for the data that's coming through. And I think it's important to understand not just how remote viewing works through metaphor, but automatic writing and how that impacts your work. So really what I want to talk about is why you should not use AI during your RV sessions, and why you should not use AI in your smoothing either. And we'll also get into why you should not use short line sketching techniques. But first, okay, I don't know if you're familiar with this dog, but this is a drawing of a dog that won first place in a dog drawing contest. And you can see here the image that won the second place. Now, if what you saw when you were in your stage, either closing your eyes or opening your eyes, depending which protocol or which method you're using. If you saw the image on the left, then you might be tempted to pass it through AI and give me the session on the right, because you see this and then you say, that's a dog, and I'll just make it prettier. And I still want it to feel like it's handmade. I still want it to feel like the people are seeing my raw remote viewing. So I'll ask the AI to do it as a pencil drawing. But so then what you're giving me is that really smiley face dog as a pencil drawing. The problem is, what if the target is something like this gantry? And maybe you were in a certain mood. Maybe you had seen something earlier that day. Maybe you dreamt about dogs last night. And so when you're doing your remote viewing, maybe the motif, the pattern that the data stream is trying to get through to you is this gantry. And it's coming through, and without your conscious awareness being triggered, there's an overlay that happens. And so it's coming in as this shape, and your conscious mind is automatically seeing it as a dog, but maybe it's a gantry. And as an analyst, if you give me this dog shape, I can see that the resemblance to the gantry. But if you give me the AI art dog, then there's no way for me to relate that to the gantry. And so you can see here as well, the gantry might be the target, or this clock tower with this bridge, that could be the target, and you could still get this funny dog cartoon in your session. And I need to see the funny dog cartoon in order to be able to understand that what you're describing is this underlying pattern of information. And that's what matters to me as the analyst. It's not how good are you at drawing dogs. And so I don't need the AI perfected image of the dog. I need to see the motif. I need to see the pattern that's coming through. So here's an example. If you, in your session work, give me this shape, that you closed your eyes, you looked at the data stream, you look to see what's at the target, and you get kind of this impression, and you decide, oh, I think that's a horse. That's fine. Give me a nice little drawing of what you saw, which you think maybe was a horse, but it kind of looked like this, right? Okay, that's fine. For my analysis, I'm holding two things in my mind, the horse concept, but I'm also holding the data pattern in my mind. And then this horse concept, maybe you're trying to describe something that's alive, that has pointy ears, has a tail, has four legs, and that's fine. These are some alternate targets that it might be. And in that case, I can still bring it back to, if you give me an AI picture of a horse, I can still say, well, it's actually a cat, but at least, you know, you're describing a biological, an animal. So you're taking your session, you're passing it through AI. AI is giving you something beautiful, and you can show that in your video. Look at the beautiful horse. The problem is that it destroys the analysis. It destroys the pattern of information, because in actual fact, the target might be something that looks like this, where you have four little pyramids here hiding by a lake with a smaller lake off to the right. If this is the actual target and you give me your little hand-drawn horse, I can see the motif and I can make sense of it. And so any data that you have in relation to this funny pattern over here, then I can say, okay, whatever data he's giving me about this will probably apply to the actual target. Whereas if you just give me this beautifully AI rendered image of a horse, there's no correlation that I can make between those items. And so if you're giving me information about the actual lake, but you're putting it next to this horse, it's harder for the analyst to make that link and to know that that data is good data. Could also be an actual target, something like this. You have the small circle, the larger circle, you have the four little triangular shapes at the bottom. So these are patterns of information that analysts need to see in your work in order to do proper analysis. And in the remote viewing community, we don't really talk about analysis. We don't talk about its importance. We don't talk about its role. But you as a remote viewer, you're not working in a vacuum. The analyst is supposed to work with you, and together you get the most out of your data. You get the most out of your session. And so I think this is something we need to really emphasize, because AI is going to destroy a lot of the patterns in the information, and it's going to make analysis a lot harder. Another thing I wanted to talk about that relates to this is these little short line sketching techniques that have for some reason become very popular. I think recently I've seen a lot of people who do these little short little lines, little line, little line, little line, rather than just giving you a smooth line. The problem with that, and I've heard some reasons for why people have adopted that technique, but I don't see any data that backs up the reasons why they're using that technique. I think people assume things and then they just take it as, okay, well, I guess that works. And so let's teach it this way. And then people learn it that way. And then other people see people doing that and it just starts being propagated, but it's not the best method. So here we see kind of this circular thing in the middle and these little shapes to the side, and they're drawn so lazily that as an analyst, it doesn't really give me a lot of information. It doesn't really tell me what was the pattern of information that you are actually accessing. And then this thing gives me nothing. Is this, am I looking at a dandelion that's been blown, dandelion seeds that have been blown onto a field near an arcade? Is this the sun and these are clouds? These are just little chicken scrawl lines. I can't see the underlying pattern because there is no pattern. It's been removed by this little line sketching technique. Whereas here, I brought this, this is from David's session on the missing Irish crown jewels. I thought it was a really good example. David is an artist, and so when he uses line drawings, you can still see the underlying pattern. You can still see the underlying motif. So if someone has the artistic talent and skill to be able to have the line drawing technique and still communicate the underlying pattern, then I'm happy, then I'm fine, because then I can see, okay, I can see exactly what the pattern is that he's describing. But not all of us are blessed with that level of skill or talent. And so if we're doing these kinds of little messy chicken scrawls, I just don't, I think that's not as useful as just finishing the line. So here's my lightning session. If I had done what I'm seeing a lot of people do for my landscape and just done little short, tiny lines, you might not be able to see the pattern of this second hill here. This second hill here, I don't know if you can see the contrast here, but there's this little hill here, and this is the actual target. And so for me, it was like, oh, this came through more as automatic writing, and it showed me that that's valid, that when my hand wants to draw a second little hill, let it, because that's actually data coming through me onto the page. Whereas if I had just had these little lines, you wouldn't be able to see how the pattern of that hill and match it up to this one. And so it would just look like noise, or it'd be messy. I went in, so when I did this session, the first thing I was immersed in were these channels of propagation of energy. That's where this S4 stage of my session started. I was like, oh, I could, channels of propagation, that word just kept coming through me. I put this into an AI to see what the AI, last night, to see what the AI would spit out. And if you type in channels of propagation, streaming energy, it gives you this. If I had put this in my page instead of my little hand drawing, it would have been off. That's bad data. If I'm like, oh, I guess it's power lines. And once I see that, that's going to affect all the rest of the data that comes in, because now my subconscious has been told, regardless of what you think, it's power lines. And so now all the information that comes through is going to be about electricity running through power lines, even though that's not the target. The target was a lightning strike. And so that's why I think it's really important not to use AI work, because you're corrupting and polluting your work. Here's an example. Chris Kraft, who was part of our team at HRVG with David and I, had a lightning strike in his session. And David had an oil pipeline in his session. I was doing analysis on this one after we had finished it. This is the one that Patrick Flanagan, you tasked us with this one. And what I noticed was the curving, the angles of the two patterns in their sessions was the same. And when I looked at the feedback image, I realized it's the same. I think that's startling. I think it's amazing. I think it's nearly miraculous that they both were able to pick up on the actual tiny details of the path of the lightning. That's not something you see in everybody's remote viewing sessions, but it's something that we should all strive towards, because that level of data, if you can get it for a lightning strike, you can get it for a road if you're looking for a location. You can get it for mapping data, things like that. So it has a broader application if you can learn to do this. Now, if instead of actually just giving me their hand-drawn session work, if Chris Kraft had got into AI and said, oh, I saw a lightning strike, give me a really pretty lightning strike I can put into my session, then that pattern would not have been visible. It would have been destroyed. And if David had gone into AI and said, oh, give me a nice oil pipeline, the data would be destroyed and would be lost forever. And that matters, because like I said, for this one, you might say, well, it's just the pattern of the lightning. Yeah, but what else can we apply this to, and how else can we use this? So I think for me, we can't overstress the importance of not corrupting your work. Here's another example from that same lightning session where David and I both had this kind of, it was very confusing, but you can kind of see there's a similarity in these two patterns. And I realized, like, oh, because the target was the photo of the lightning, because the photo was taken right as the lightning was striking the statue. And so we were picking up on elements of the camera and the shutter. Now, if we had both just done little tiny short lines that don't quite show what it is you're trying to draw, it would have been, I think, probably impossible to figure out what the heck that was and how it relates to the target. But because we closed our lines and because we drew the pattern of information that was coming through us, and you can see David has more artistic skill and mine is more like a child's drawing, but because I'm drawing the pattern, the motif, you can still match it to the elements in the target, and you can match it to the other viewer's data. And so that's valuable. This one as well, if I had just done little lines, I don't think it would have been easy to match it up to the target shape. But because I have closed lines, because I'm drawing it, even if I'm drawing it in my little, 12-year-old cartoon style, it's the pattern is there, and that's what we need. And so I'm going to stop there, and we can discuss that, and you guys can tell me what you think before we move on to our target reveal.
Yeah, I'll just add my comments real quick. Part of the thing something to consider is that, because Sasha and I have both seen this, and Jeff and Patrick and others, is that when you get feedback, that feedback can influence your work in the past when you're actually doing the remote viewing session. It's like this loop kind of thing that you're not necessarily even aware of. You can do something and you're actually only maybe getting that data because somebody showed you a photograph that's super stimulating, or the target and emotion or something like that literally affected your ability to get that data. And so if you're at some point relating the AI work to your session, this is like a form of looping feedback that can affect you in the past. So this is where it could be a big problem for some people, or in some situations where it can just, like Sasha said, it could destroy patterns that would be of great value, like she just gave some of these examples. The other thing I'd say about AI, when people to me talk about it, because I work in a technological company and I have people that program AI and all this kind of stuff, and it's like there are data sets that they train this stuff with for a very specific set of pattern matching capabilities to solve a very specific type of problem. That's all it is. It's not whatever it is, like all-knowing. It's not applicable to all sorts of other stuff. It's applicable for that one specific task. So in terms of remote viewing, whenever AI is brought up, and again, it could just be in the context of this photo stuff or this imagery kind of thing, which is one aspect. That's fine. You could sort of see how it maybe could apply. But in many other aspects, my first question is like, okay, but nobody's trained AI to work on remote viewing specific data sets for very specific pattern searching aspects. So why are you even bringing it up? Why are you even talking about it? What is the value here? What is the actual value? Because a lot of times, just in my opinion, when they bring this up, I'm thinking like, I don't know if they really understand how this AI stuff actually works and its actual value. And I'm not saying it can't be used that way. That would be awesome. It's just I'm not really aware of anybody who's actually gone that route yet. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, thank you, David. What do you guys think?
I personally think that what you just said here is entirely true. But to bounce back on what David was saying, I think it could still be valuable if you feed it correctly. So if everyone had their own GPT model, not something general, because we all have different data, but that you would train it with all of your remote sessions, hundreds and hundreds of remote sessions, and then give the feedback, it could make patterns of how you feel and how you perceive stuff. And then it could be a bit valuable in maybe trying to give you a better idea of what the target could be before you get the feedback. I'm not sure if that brings that much value in the end. But where I think AI can still help is in monitoring yourself. So I tried some kind of ERV sessions just with ChatGPT, and before I trained it just to try to not talk too much, but more guide you into the perception, and that was pretty cool. But for the art part, I completely agree with what you just shown, Sasha.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I feel like it's a bit of cheating. It's like it's when you're looking for an AI photo or something, that you're distracted from the target, something like that. So
yes,
I'm just curious as well. Like, I'm not familiar with AI really, and I'm certainly not familiar with remote viewers using it. But I was just wondering, when they punched the data into whatever it was, Chat AI or one of those things, did they punch in the descriptions of the target and their AOLs, like say the pipeline? Because I mean, if you punch in the pipeline, you're basically punching in an AOL into the system, and it's going to give you exactly what a human mind will, which is a mismatch for the target. But if you just punch just descriptor, I wonder if you just put the descriptors in themselves, what would it turn out?
But even then, because then you would be putting, a pipe like something or other, and there are, it curves here and there, but are you actually going to take the time to say, half a centimeter in, it goes off to the left, and then a quarter centimeter, it goes into the right? I don't think
it probably doesn't. You see, it hasn't got a built-in function to interpret what's metaphor from our noise. It'll have to have a kind of a noise recognition, not pattern recognition aspect to it, to be able to kind of go, well, okay, it can filter for these and then just filter out the descriptors of that data. Like if you unpacked, like if it had a way of unpacking an AOL, like a pipeline, it might give you descriptors connected with that, and that's all you really want. And if it was filtering for just that, and it was giving you a match just on those descriptors, it might turn out something that's a bit closer. But I think the AOL was probably the label was probably driving the image. I'm not sure.
Yeah. But I think this links back to what I was saying. It depends on how you perceive stuff, because the AOLs that I would get are probably not the same AOLs that somebody else would get. But if I feed in hundreds of sessions that AI model with my AOLs, then it can maybe know that if I see a tractor, it means it's a vehicle or something like that. Because in 80% of my sessions, that's what happened. But I don't think there can be a model for everyone.
No. But I remember, like, going back to the very, very beginning part of the way you described this, and I've had many, many examples of this over the years, is you start to render out a sketch and you think you're describing something in your head, and you sketch it out and it's completely different. The target was something completely different, but the sketch was perfect. It fitted perfectly. Now, I don't think there's a program out there that can do that kind of interpretation. So your mind is capable of capturing the target and turning it into something in order for you to be able to output it. So you can get it out. So just don't believe in what you're doing. But even when the times when I did believe I was on target, I was off, but the image was right. So that's the kind of, I think the human mind is way advanced. Technology can't match that.
And in men, at least, different parts of your brain regulate language and visual information.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think a lot of people have seen the video of the split brain patient where they show him a bird and he has to draw what he's seen and then he has to say what he's seen, and he draws a bird but he says orange because they show different imagery to the different eyes. That's what it is. And then they ask him, well, you're saying that you saw an orange but you drew a bird, why? Explain. He actually creates this huge lie, and he doesn't know that he's lying. He's like, well, you know, the blue markers were kind of dry and the orange marker worked better. So like he just makes up this whole story. And the point of it is, if the data is coming in through your visual center, you might not be able to articulate what you saw if different data is coming through your visual center at the same time. And that's where I think, Patrick, what you're saying, sometimes you draw a sketch and if you're to describe it, you're like, well, you know, I had the sense of ocean and salt water, but that's not what you're drawing. You're drawing something else, and your drawing is accurate for the target, right? And that's the thing. So I think you have to make room for that, and ARV doesn't, or AI art does not. I want to say hello to the people in chat. It's My Remote Journey has joined us. Hello. And Vlad, I appreciate your input. And B is here as well. Hello, B. David, I think you're going to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to make a point that I'm not anti-technology, so I do believe there are probably applications for AI with remote viewing that could be very useful. But just my previous statements are, in its current state or form, I'm not clear that it is of immense value, or if somebody thinks it is, I need to understand more specifics so I can make sure that the thinking is correct. So just wanted to say that.
And I think it brings us to this other question that I have for all of you. What is it that we're trying to do with remote viewing? Are you just trying to make something, oh, pretty, oh, the drawing matches, seal clap? Or are you trying to give meaning, complexity, information that can't be accessed in any other way? If you're just wanting to be, oh, look, my drawing matches the target drawing, seal clap, then yeah, AI, maybe if you are lucky enough that you describe to your AI something in a way that it'll generate an image that matches. But to me, that's not what we're doing. To me, we're looking for complex meaning, and we're looking for things that the tasker doesn't know. I think for practice targets is, yes, you want to be able to show the tasker, this is the target you gave me, and this is exactly what I described, and I'm telling you exactly what you already know to show that I can. But once you move beyond that, you have to be able to provide the unknown. And I think that's where you have to understand that your job as a remote viewer is not to create something very pretty as a little piece of art, although the better your sketches are, the better it is for people to be able to understand the information you're trying to get through. But that's not the primary purpose. The primary purpose is you're communicating the information underneath it, right? At least that's what I think. What do you guys think? Maybe you have a different opinion, or?
I have a twist on that.
Yeah.
So part of the act of remote viewing and getting feedback is improving your remote viewing. So you want to work with what your mind gives you and use this as essentially a training tool. So if you drew a good dog, a bad dog, a good horse, a bad horse, it's a matter of, okay, how did that really relate to the target, and teaching your, in my terminology, subconscious, okay, you gave me good data here. If you add another step and add another filter to that, you're really not going to allow yourself to improve your remote viewing. I think you're adding a step, maybe making it more pretty, but going to make it harder for you to remote view in the future.
Yes. And also, and we're going to see that in some of today's data. Sometimes you have the pattern correct, but the interpretation is wrong. And the analyst can still see the pattern. So I want to be able to see the original pattern. But also, sometimes the wrong interpretation can be a play on words that actually does give you more information, but in a funny way. Or sometimes it's just this really weird interpretation that the interpretation itself provides a different way of understanding the target, a valid way. And all of that is lost when you just, here's the really pretty horse drawing that AI generated for me. You just lose so much. So, Michael, what do you think?
I'm in agreement. I think it just kind of introduces more noise because you're not training it with the language models related to actual remote viewing work. If you could develop a container where you have a bunch of people doing remote viewing with objective feedback based on what the actual targets are and just train solely on that, maybe you'd get somewhere as the AI adapts kind of our own thinking patterns and our perceptual, symbolic, interpretive models. But yeah, in general, I mean, who cares how pretty your drawing is? Like, it's more important just like give valuable data to the analyst, kind of like get something out of it.
Yeah. And Claudia, did you want to add a bit?
You're muted.
I think she's trying to unmute.
I had to look for the unmute. No, I already said it. It feels like cheating.
Yeah.
So I don't like to do it.
No. Yeah, I agree.
No.
And so that's the thing. I think that we have to have the conversation in the broader community, because I think that a lot of people who are newer to remote viewing and don't yet understand the complexity of remote viewing, all they've done is very basic swiping at targets maybe, or I don't think that they realize what they're going to miss by using AI. And my concern is that because people are so excited about using AI, and so all these new people are going to incorporate that into their remote viewing practice, and then that will become a norm. And then that's what, then the new batch of new people are just going to copy what everybody else does. And so then we're losing the value of, and also I have to wonder a little bit as remote viewers, this is one of the few things that you do where it's pure mind and consciousness. And I wonder sometimes, why are people so eager to replace themselves with AI, right? Because the first step is, oh, I'm just going to use AI to interpret my sketches. But the second step is get rid of the remote viewer and just try to get the AI to pick up on the data in the data stream. And I know that there are some groups in the military that are already kind of trying to see if they can do that. And I don't think we should be too eager to replace ourselves, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Still to be seen if it's possible.
Exactly.
Because in theory, as humans, we have the possibility to access non-local perception. I mean, at least I think everybody here thinks that. But an AI, unless I'm proven wrong, is just a computer. So even how hard you can try, it will never be able to access that.
I don't think it's so either, because I think the best a computer can do is pattern match at a real rapid high level, but that'd be like us pattern matching inside of our brain. But there's so many other aspects to remote viewing and consciousness itself and the field theory. You know, those things are not understood at all, and so I don't think kind of programs and technology have the ability to go outside of themselves like a human brain can. You know, and we're a part of this consciousness. We're immersed in it. You know, we're not separate from it. We have difficulty accessing it and difficulty filtering it. But we are immersed in this field, and we are part of it, and we contribute to it. Machines can't do that, you know.
Yes, I think that we contribute to it. I think that's an important point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. But I think I would encourage people to bring it up with other remote viewers, have a conversation, because I think that there's a trend towards wanting to make things popular by making them conform to popular trends. And AI art is a popular trend. And I see remote viewing thinking, oh, maybe we can just jump on that bandwagon. I don't think that's the right path, personally. Yeah. So shall we move into the target reveal the feedback data?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. I'm going to do, I think, this one. And nope. I will master this at some point, I'm sure. The screen sharing on StreamYard. There we go. And no, you're not have to add it. There we go. Yes?
Yes, you can see it.
Okay, so the first target we have is the Kozyrev mirror. And the retasking that you got would have been something along the lines of expand on some detail in your first session. The Kozyrev mirror is a Russian invention, but if you look into it, it's something a lot older than that. It's this idea that patterns, geometric patterns especially in our reality, seem to interact with the information stream, with consciousness, with the data stream that we as remote viewers are interacting with, and even with time to some extent. And so Nikolai Kozyrev was a Russian physicist, and he developed this whole different theory of timing having viscosity, being how to move in and out of time. If it's a viscous thing that can be affected by shapes, by the solar eclipse. That was one of the things that he found with his pendulums. He noticed that pendulums behave in an anomalous manner under eclipses. And it's something that there's a French economist who noticed the same thing. Allais is his last name. And so we call it the Allais effect. And that's well known and it's well described, and scientists accept it, but they don't have an explanation for it. So they don't like to talk about it. But it is a stated fact in science that pendulums behave strangely during solar eclipses. And Nikolai Kozyrev over in Russia, he found similar things, but related them to time and how time moves. And so he built these Kozyrev mirrors that were spiral shaped, and that's important, is the shape of it. And when people were inside it, it was easier for them to remote view, to receive remote viewing, telepathy to some extent, and have a lot of anomalous consciousness experiences. And so I thought that might be an interesting target to give you. So the basic Kozyrev mirror is an aluminum spiral, but you also have aluminum cylinders. So different groups since Kozyrev have tried to tweak it, have tried to do different things with it. Kozyrev developed it not only for the consciousness effects, but for healing as well. And he was able to heal more what they call the psychosomatic diseases, but even things like arthritis. He was able to see significant improvements in people who were suffering from arthritis who spent 20 minutes a day in a Kozyrev mirror. But then there are things where you have to have the spiraling in the right direction for healing versus consciousness work. So it's a little bit more complicated than just building a metal cylinder and hoping it'll heal you. But for the remote viewing improvement, for psychic development, the cylinders also work well. So here are the different types. You have the horizontal ones with a little mattress inside, and then you have the vertical ones, and they come in different shapes. Most of them are open at the top. Then you have this egg-shaped one. There are articles in the German press about these, the Russian press. The English language press has been pretty muted about it. I think there's some suppression that's going on there. But you can find translations of the Russian research on this. And so looking at some of your data, one of the things I thought was interesting, Jeff, you had this, how was it made? It was drawn, it was visualized, and then it was created, and there's some magic involved. And I thought that was funny because I have made my own Kozyrev mirror, and that's how I made it. I drew it. I had to draw these sketches. I had to figure out the dimensions of it because the patent, the one that's described in the patent, would have been way too big to fit in my little home. And I had to create it, and there was magic involved in that. And so I just felt like that was a little personal note. I liked that. Here we have, oh, and I forgot to mention, so at the bottom here, you see the remote viewer's name and color. And then that's the borders around the boxes tell you which remote viewer had that data. And so Chris, you had this metallic structure, and you had these kind of ring patterns, concentric rings. And so did Patrick Flanagan, had that same kind of rimmed pattern. And you can see here, this aluminum one has this rim at the top. And in Kozyrev's original patent, he does actually mention that you have a rim at the top, not just to give it a little bit more stability, but also for the effects that it has on the ether. And Patrick, you had spiral object, so that's exactly what it is. So I thought that was really good. Here we see, so I put this example of a vertical one. Jeff, you had the precise design of it here, but the interpretation was off. So you had it as like a tall hat. And that's what I was talking about before. If you had got into into an AI image generator and put in, oh, I'm seeing men in tall hats, the image that would have been brought back would have been less pure in terms of matching it to the target. Whereas with your hand-drawn image, I can see right away, oh yeah, okay, that's your little Kozyrev mirror and his little round base. And the original patent also was on a round base, so that makes sense. Claudia, I wanted to single you out because this was your first page of your session. And the first thing that you wrote was round metal. And I just thought that was excellent that you got such strong target contact right from the start. That was really nice to see. And you did see it as shiny and expensive. And it is very expensive to make. Yeah. Patrick, you were really picking up on the tube, that it was circular, that it was hollow. You really had these kind of words that came through in multiple places in your session. I thought that was a really good target contact, that you were seeing the curvy object, that there was something about the shape. It's tubular, that just kept coming through, and that it was metallic. So I thought that was good to see. Feel free to jump in and interrupt me if you want to. Is someone trying? Okay. And so then here again, I thought this was amazing. So Patrick, you basically drew the Kozyrev mirror as well, the vertical one. So you were having the circular ring shape. And oh, someone just joined. So let me add them in. That's Jeff. And Jeff also had these kind of donut or ring shapes. And I thought, and again, we're looking here at how data comes through in different ways. So Jeff has this object, metal on metal, and it's a deep ring. So here he's talking about the sound, right? Because he has dong and the deep ring, but the words are there. The data, it's not the sound of a deep ringing sound. It's a deep ring of metal. And so that's just another example of where if you had put that data into the AI, maybe you'd come back with some kind of a bell-shaped device, or an alarm, but that's not what it is. I want to see the word deep ring written down by your data, because that's actually the target. And donut shape here, I think that matches very closely. Claudia, you had a metal ring as well. So you were matching very closely with Patrick's ring shape data. That was really nice to see. Again, Patrick, you had about its construction, so that it was cut shaped design, an idea of something big with a circular component, and they're enormous. So I thought that was really good. Again, here we see Claudia's data, the valuable metal rings, and we saw someone else had said expensive metal as well, the precious metal from Claudia. So you're picking up on that idea of, and the specialty of the metal. Mostly Kozyrev mirrors are made of aluminum, but if you look at the original Russian patent, it was an aluminum alloy. And some of the other metals you can use now, you can use mu metal, which is exceptionally expensive, but it's a very good shielder. So I think that's good data as well. And the idea that it was discovery years ago, so this dates back, I think, to the 60s, if I'm not mistaken, was when Kozyrev first got the patent. And the idea that it's so Claudia, I like that you get the purpose of it. I've seen that now in your sessions, that you tend to be very good at extracting the purpose, and you got some kind of energy machine. And it's a consciousness energy machine. And so that's good data. And Chris as well, you did the same thing, and there seems to be a concept of energy transfer that happens in a curved way. And I thought that was a really beautiful description, because one of the theories, the Russians have physics understanding that's a little bit different from what we have in the West, but they talk about torsion fields. and they talk about something that we might call the ether, and that the ether, when it's rotating or when it's curved, has different properties, and that there seems to be energy that you can extract from the ether if you curve it or if you rotate it. So I thought that was really nice to see in your data, Chris. And then here's exactly what I was talking about in my little AI presentation. Jeff, you drew what looks very much like the original Kozyrev device mirror. You have the segmented sessions and you have it on a round base. So this image is the metallic component, but if you look further in the original patent, it's on a round base as well. And so this is actually correct data. But in your description of it, you had overlays like maybe it's a zoo, maybe it's a stadium, not too clear. So if you had given me, instead of giving me your hand drawing that I can match up and say that's a perfect match, if you had instead given me an AI generated image of a sports stadium, that would be removed. That would be a loss of data, right? I would still maybe be able to match it up, but you're losing the accuracy of the original data. And here again, you had the correct shape, the correct dimensions, but you had analytical overlay that was causing a misinterpretation of what it was that you're describing. So I thought it was interesting to see everywhere in your session. I think because your mind was trying to get the right interpretation out, and it was coming close to the right interpretation, but not quite. And so it just kept trying again on the next page or on the next row or the next column. So here as well, right? I think you had one of these as a landscape, element of a landscape with a person climbing a tower. And again, it's that idea of like the data is coming through, but the interpretation is wrong. Here you have it as an eggplant. And if you look at Nostradamus, his Kozyrev mirror was shaped more like an eggplant than a cylinder. And that's why you have this white one here as well that's more in that rounded shape. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
So the picture that's on the upper left, I actually had that drawn as sort of being like a well. And in that bucket, the text next to it was pulling out the apples.
Yes.
And so if this is for healing, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, I see that as just all being connected. I think the apples was actually right on.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. Definitely. Yes. And that's what I'm saying, how sometimes the wordplay is giving you good data, and it's interesting. And then we have Patrick Andekark, who isn't here today, but he did submit his data, so I wanted to show it as well. He was also picking up on these segments and the cylinder, and he has that it feels like a device. And I like that he was probing for, okay, what does it feel like? It feels like a device. That's maybe a more complex point of data. So it's nice to see that coming through. And Chris, you were very much like Jeff, also kind of the shape was coming through as well in your data at various stages. I think this is one of your early visits, but already you're getting the spiral, the curve, the rotation. So I thought that was really nice. And then people started getting the sense of gears. And like I said, the original one is on a rotating platform, circular platform. So the original one did have a motor inside to rotate it and would have had gears. And so that is good data. If you just look at this, you might think, oh, there are no gears there, but the original did. And so I thought, Jeff, you had the donut shape, the ring shape, you had kind of the gear-like, and you have the ether, I think, something flowing through, which I would say that the data stream pours in through the Kozyrev mirror. So to me, that's a really nice sketch. Patrick, again, that circular ring shape, I think that's a really good sketch for what you're describing. And then Claudia, you had this circular chain. And again, sometimes with remote viewing, we'll see things in pieces, and the pieces don't always come together in the right way. And so if something's a spiral, instead of seeing the spiral shape, sometimes we'll see a series of circles. And I think that that's kind of what you're picking up on here. And so I still thought that was really good data. And the metal chain, because it's a metal spiral. So I thought that was really good. And I just liked that, Claudia, your gears matched Jeff's gears as well very closely.
Yes, what I saw, I mean, when we see the YouTube film, the first images, all kind of clocks and watches, and I thought I only saw these 2 or 3 wheels, and I thought it was the back of a clock, for
Okay.
time,
Yeah.
grabbing in each other. So
Well, so the Kozyrev mirror, when it's static, when it's not moving, it has some effects, and then when you make it spin, it has different effects. And so when you have a Kozyrev mirror on a proper spinning base, then it does seem to allow easier movement through time. So if you're wanting to remote view the past, the distant past, or you want to remote view the future and you want less noise, having a Kozyrev mirror that spins might give you slightly better access. So it makes it easier to move in time. So I think that's really interesting. Here they talk about it in a few of the videos that are, so there used to be a lot more videos on YouTube in Russian translated to English, but most of them are gone now. But you can still find some, and you can see here they're talking about the reflection of physical time. And then here you can see in one of the experiments that they filmed, here's the remote viewer, and they've put a shielding helmet on his head, and this huge piece of metal, that's actually the inside of this enormous Kozyrev mirror. So that's what that is. Here you can see, Jeff, you also picked up then on the gears. You had the word gears, you're describing the rotation, the wheel, metal dust. So again, you have this metal ring that's rotating. So that's perfect data. And then you had what if time were a light in relation to this. And I thought that was fantastic data. That idea of, because that's one of the things that Kozyrev was talking about was, what is time? Does it have mass? And can you affect it with gravity? And if you have pendulums swinging through the ether, then how does that affect time? Is time warped by the motion of the pendulum in the ether? And I think the idea of if time were a light, if time and photons, because photons are massless and time appears to be massless, even though it seems to be viscous or dense. So I think that's a really interesting correlation, a complex correlation that came through in your data. So I was really delighted to see that come through. And then you have this imagery of these gears around this kind of circular cylinder object. So again, great data. And Claudia, you were describing earlier, you were saying the gears on the back of the clock. So I think that very close match to what Jeff was describing. So I thought that was good data. And even though you're kind of presenting it as a clock, the underlying data pattern is good. It's a really good match. And it's time indicating, that was good. And Patrick Andekirk also had this idea of a timeline, piercing the veil of dimensions, high energy. So that's that idea of piercing the veil of dimensions. I would tie that into Jeff's question about what if time is a light? And then how can this machine interact with that? And then Patrick, I'm hoping you can say a few words about this, because I thought this was fantastic data, the Ouroboros symbol of infinity occult. Did you want to say a few things here?
Yeah, I think that was a retask. Was it? I'm not sure. Yeah, it was just, I mean, the ring shape was coming through, and I knew it had an esoteric kind of, or exotic flavor to it. And I was trying my best not to attach anything labeled to it, but those were, so I mean, when I was holding back from maybe going into UFO territory or something like that, the kind of things that you can do. And so I was just kind of going, well, okay, if I hold back and I just kind of go, well, what is this? Because I know it's a man-made, I know it's curved, what's it doing, and what's its meaning? Those were the kind of ideas that I was getting. It was like it had some kind of connection to something like that. That symbol, even though I've come across that before, I don't really know what it is, but only that it has some kind of connection to something kind of occult or esoteric, or kind of maybe kind of energy and infinity, that kind of thing. So I was aware that I was attaching heads to the end of this as well, but no, I mean I wasn't sure. The only thing I can be certain of is that it had some kind of meaning. That there was something more than just a machine that was just technology for the sake of technology.
Yes, and it's correct because the Ouroboros sign, it's the snake eating its tail, and it symbolizes infinity. But if you look into it, it's actually talking about cycles. And when you look at secret society's use of that symbolism, it had to do with cycles. It had to do with the idea. I mean, some people talk about it as galactic, because if you look at the center of the galaxy that we can see in our sky, it does look like a snake eating an egg or its tail, right? So it's that idea of galactic cycles. But even just in terms of cycles of disastrous events, cataclysms, these kinds of things, right? It's the idea that you have these disasters, but then some humans survive and they rebuild, and then the disaster comes again. So it's that idea of like I think that the Freemasons kind of had that idea of order out of chaos, whereas I think this predates that. And this was saying, don't worry too much about the chaos because order will always return because the snake eats its tail and it's just this ongoing infinity. So I thought you're tying it back to time in a way in terms of the cycles through this symbol. And so I just thought that was fantastic data. Cool, yeah. And also I like that you were probing for that, for like, what is the purpose? What is the function? What is the esoteric about it, right? I thought that was really good. Mm. And then here we have Chris. Chris, your site sketch. I think, Chris, you had a little bit of displacement between the two targets. And, you know, David talked about that really well, I think, on our last live stream about how can we close a target before we start the next one. And I just heard a little sound to say Jeff is back. So yeah, I think for yours, there was a little bit of displacement. However, having said that, this is the energy going into the spinning Kozyrev, and you're seeing the Kozyrev mirror as a structure. And you see this shape is so much the same as the shape here that Jeff had drawn. So I think that underlying pattern of information is correct. You're describing these mirrors and the energy that flows into them. And then Chris, here you had said something related to a ceremony of some sort, a hollow structure that seems to be conceptually sacred. And I thought that sacredness ties into Patrick picking up on that sense of the occult, on that sense of something esoteric. So again, you're both picking up on this isn't just a metal ring or a metal cylinder. This is something that has a deeper level of meaning. And that's just amazing to see you guys pick up on that. I thought that was really good. Chris here, if you want to talk a little bit about this, I thought, again, this is fantastic representation of the Kozyrev mirror, the energy going in and out of it, passing through it as a transfer. And again, you have this word holy, sacred, something like an ayahuasca ceremony, which is altered consciousness. And when you're in a Kozyrev mirror, it is easier to access different states of consciousness. So did you want to say something about this, Chris?
I'm not sure I can add too much to it, but yeah, related to the sentence that was shown earlier, I had that sense that there was some kind of transfer of energy from one point to another in a curved way. And so I did this one with HRVG. So this was one of the Blackboard session, one of the Blackboard parts. And here I had this idea of a wormhole where something comes in, there's like energy transfer, and it comes out in a different way.
Yes. Yeah, I thought that was really, really good data. And then here, Chris, a little bit more of your data, this idea of something dangerous, but also something about protection from something energetic, and that idea of metallic. I think your sketch that you had with this data matches fairly well with Patrick Andekirk's data. He had these like a code-like computer code flowing through. And I thought that's a really good description of the ether, of the data stream that we interact with as remote viewers. And that when I'm in my Kozyrev mirror, that's very much how I feel about it, that there is this data rich stream that flows. And I feel as a remote viewer, when I'm in my sessions, that's how I feel in my sessions, right? That there's just this, your flow, the ether is flowing through you with all the data in it. So I thought he had a really, really good sketch here as well, where he has the Kozyrev cylinder and the data pouring through. So I thought that was really nice. He also talks about consciousness and integrated knowledge. That's a really nice description of the data stream. And this is going to tie, I think this ties into maybe Claudia's work that I have on a future slide, but the intersection of humanity, future intersection of humanity, that this is somehow something more than what we're looking at right now. And then tying it back to Jeff's comment about light, Patrick Andekirk also had travel faster than light in relation to this sketch and this idea of perfect resonance, ether, consciousness, and an effect on the human body or the viscera. So here he's picking up on the health effects of the Kozyrev mirror. Yeah, and so he has a portal, something being harvested, experimental tuning in of a vibrational portal. I think that's a perfect description of my Kozyrev, which is an experimental tuning in. And he had this sense of a biotech machine. Again, he's kind of tapping in on both uses of the Kozyrev mirror for consciousness and psi ability, psychic ability, but also for the healing properties that it has.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Frequency, vibration, information, the idea of joyfulness that I resonate with for this. And he even had the idea of the antenna. And I actually do think that that's relevant because when you have a remote viewer in a Kozyrev machine, they can maybe more easily receive from a sender that's outside the Kozyrev machine for remote viewing or for telepathy. So I thought that was really interesting. He has, again, the ether all around this kind of. So here, again, I think I would like to have seen a sketch that was a little bit less tentative. So Patrick, if you're watching, Dutch Patrick, I would say don't feel too tentative about your data. Your data is good data. And so just mark the lines, draw what you see, because then it's a little bit easier to kind of make sense of the sketch. But I see the circular, I see it's cylindrical, that there are these different axes, motion along different axes. And he's talking about a fixed point to adjust and tap into. And I would say if you're using your intent and you're trying to tap into something specific when you're remote viewing in a Kozyrev machine, this would be a good description of that. So I thought an energy field, I thought this was a really good session from Dutch Patrick. And then here, so Irish Patrick, you have here that keep getting the idea that it's a shape that means something. Ancient ideas depicted. So again, that sense of sacred geometry. And that's really the foundation of the Kozyrev mirror, is that he was looking at why do we have this idea of sacred geometry? How do these basic shapes influence time and consciousness? And Claudia, I put a big piece of your summary because although usually I'm not very supportive of summaries, in your case, I think you do really good work with your summaries. And you mentioned this last time that you do them still in a remote viewing state. So you're not just coldly interpreting, trying to infer from your session what it is. You're still in that state of receiving data. And I think it works for you. So you have this valuable round thing. You have that it's one of a kind, very special, unique, that it's part of something much bigger. But that if this part is missing, the whole thing doesn't work. If we were working a project, I probably would have given you another retasking to tell me more about that, because I thought that was really interesting. It's in the possession of a person, not a museum. I thought that was really good data. That's the kind of questions that a lot of remote viewers wouldn't ask, is who does this belong to? And what extra information does that give me about the target? So that was really good. And it feels as if this part was hidden, or the knowledge of it just came out and it's presented to the world, but the reactions are doubtful. I love that your mind goes to that, and that's the data that comes through. And it's so true. The Kozyrev mirrors have been out since the 60s, but most people don't know about them because science dismisses it without even looking into it, because they just say, well, it's a metal cylinder. How could that have any interesting effects, right? And so I thought it was really good. I do want to know, what is this part that if this part is missing, the whole thing doesn't work? What's the central element that you're keying into? Maybe in future, if there's an opportunity, that's something that I would explore with you. A better retasking.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was the whole concept of healing and time traveling. And if you do not have the mirror, then you can forget it, something like that. Yeah, I think that's what you mean.
Nice. Okay, that makes sense. And then here as well, where you said, I love this as well. It reminded you of a great artist, and names pop up like Leonardo da Vinci and Fabergé. And that, Claudia, I have to say, you get great data in such a pure way. And I really love seeing your sessions because of this. So Nostradamus, I think a lot of the sketches about him, I can see that relationship to Leonardo da Vinci, to be honest. And then Fabergé. So Fabergé was making Fabergé eggs, right?
Yes, exactly. So when I was looking at YouTube, then I saw this Nostradamus photo which you had in the earlier page, and I think I connected that to the Fabergé, and I also saw that like Leonardo da Vinci also had this concept, but then he mentioned it, the mirror chamber sketch.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can read this or if it's too small, but it says this is just a above top secret website about the Kozyrev mirror. And he says this is a unique device, the prototype of which was the egg of Nostradamus. And so right there, so Nostradamus was referring to his version of a Kozyrev mirror as an egg. And you are referencing Fabergé eggs. And so I just thought that's so perfect.
Yes, indeed. Fabergé is for me the eggs.
Yeah.
Because I know, because my eldest kid always collected these eggs, Some kind, not the Fabergé, of course, but these porcelain things.
Yes.
So when he was very young. So these eggs have something to do with me.
And they also have something to do with Russia, because the Russian Tsars, they did acquire a lot of the Fabergé eggs were made for them. And so that's a nice link to Russia as well. And Irish Patrick, you're also getting this idea that these were ancient ideas. And these are, people like to say, oh, yes, this is just a new invention that came up recently, but it's not. It's based on this esoteric knowledge. And so then here we have Chris, where you were picking up on spiraling, connected, intense meaning. I love that piece of data. The energy emission, and again, these concentric kind of rings. And you have this energy movement above the structure. So I thought that was really good data coming from your sessions, Chris. And then Dutch Patrick had kind of this quantum entanglement concept, these wavelengths between 2D and 3D. And theoretically complicated, impossible discoveries by chance. I thought that was really good because, again, here's this physicist in Russia who kind of discovers by chance that these things, that the shape, the spiral shape, has these effects on the ether. And so I thought that was really nice. Connecting everything to nothing, tangible to intangible. Again, it's that idea of you're manifesting consciousness constructs in a Kozyrev machine. That's one of the purposes, or one of the uses it has. And again, Claudia, if you look here, this one is very much egg-shaped. So that's another link to your data.
Yeah.
And then Irish Patrick, the flash of radiant light, that idea of expression or manifestation. slowly expanding light energy. I thought this was all very good data. And then I'm going to laugh a little bit because in close proximity to a bright light source, if you look at these images, you can see that the Kozyrev mirrors are always very close to the light. And mine, actually, I didn't measure properly. So mine is right up to my light fixture. And so I took that as a personal description of my personal one. I thought that was funny. And then Jeff, you have energizing the flow. And what is this?
Recirculation.
Recirculation through the leading edge. This is significant in other ways that I wouldn't talk about on YouTube, but that was really good data.
That's hilarious. Okay.
You also had people walking in a circle telling stories.
Yes.
And again, I was thinking, the Kozyrev mirror, some of the experiments in Russia when they went to the ISERC, their like National Science Society or Institute equivalent. And so essentially that's what they were doing, because they weren't all trained remote viewers. And so these people were going into the Kozyrev machine not really knowing what to expect. So some people were seeing the future, some people were seeing the past, the medieval times. And so I thought that was good data, just this idea of like people that are experiencing these stories in this circle. And then Irish Patrick, this was interesting to me because you have this man-made here in proximity to this bright light source. So again, you're pretty much saying the exact same thing. And then we have Dutch Patrick, who has the exact same sketch nearly. He has this man-made next to something energetic, right? And so you have this as like a flashing explosion or expansion, I mean. And he has this thing where it's like, is it a void, a no thing? Something about an implosion. So I thought that was interesting that he has the implosion and you have the expansion. But it's definitely that kind of ether, maybe, right? Next to this Kozyrev mirror. And then this, I forgot to put the color border around it, but this is, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is Dutch Patrick. And if you watch the YouTube video about the Kozyrev mirrors, you'll see that at the Institute of their National Science, they did have all these kind of scientists and men on the outside, and they did have the spiral on the inside, and they were doing all kinds of tests and measuring outputs. And so I'm going to stop at that and let's discuss a little bit. So what did you guys think of that?
That's good. Great target.
Good.
Yeah. See, the thing about these kind of targets I like is because, you learn so much about control of yourself, because it's kind of vocabulary. If you don't have the kind of words to really describe what's there, then you're relying on some kind of, like the signal line AOLs or metaphor, So it's kind of a balancing act to kind of hold off and just kind of go, well, what is it? What is it not? And kind of find a peaceful middle ground between them, But, I love those kind of targets. They're great.
Nice. And I like the information that you probe for, and I'm hoping that the audience, the people who are watching, I hope that inspires them to try to ask those same kinds of questions. That's what I'm seeing in this group, is that you guys ask good questions of the data. You probe for interesting concepts, and so you get really interesting data that comes out of it.
Yeah, on a good day, it's great.
Yeah, right.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
When I checked my session, the one with the rings, the chain, and I thought maybe it had to do with the torsion. What they said. The effects of the unknown energy beams.
The torsion fields on the ether. Yes, definitely.
That's what I had. Whether it had to do with that.
I think so. I do. David, what did you think of the sessions?
I thought it was very good. I thought it was a good target, and I thought everybody had good data and contact with the target. It's always interesting to see how the information comes in from each individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating, and also to be able to see the correlation between each other's work.
Yeah, there were a few that were quite striking, where two different viewers sketched very much the same thing. That's always amazing to see. Yeah. Any other comments?
It shows the value of working as a group, you know, because like, I mean, if you take all of those kind of elements that people have that are kind of similar, and then the ones that are kind of unique to the person's session, and join them together, you can get a nice little kind of composite of the actual target.
And I think it also allows you to better understand what kind of data you as a viewer get.
Yeah.
When you see
Yeah.
the contrast between the viewers, but also similar data that comes through, but with a different flavor between two viewers. And I think that's a useful thing to know for yourself, because then you know, oh, this is kind of the kind of data that I get. And so you can know what kind of teams you might work well with or for projects.
I stepped away, but I assume that Michael's question was answered.
Oh, no, which one?
So Michael asked, how do you learn to ask better questions from the data? One thing I would say personally is you can look, because Sasha and I have kind of talked about that at different times, but you might consider when you look at your session work after a particular target, you get feedback, is to think about the things you could have asked that you did not. So sort of that process will help you to go like, oh, the next time I have a target, maybe this is something that I might ask. So that process of kind of reviewing the data and thinking about how you could have done better in that session that you just finished, you can apply to the next one, basically.
And I think preparing to a certain extent, preparing questions that are like, what is the purpose? What is the function? What is the relationship between this and this other thing that I did in the last page? Having those as kind of template questions, so that when you're in your session, you don't have to break into analysis mode to think of the next question, because that can kind of break your signal line access. So if you can automate it so that you just practice, so that you don't have to think, okay, what is the next question? You just, what is the purpose? What is the function? What is the underlying meaning of this? How does this relate to the person that I was describing? And then when you get something, you know, you get a symbol like the Ouroboros. Okay, well, why? What is it about this that's relevant to the target? And it feels esoteric. Okay, tell me more about that. And then I think the more you practice those kinds of questions, the more you can do what Claudia is doing when she gets to her summary. She's not exiting the remote viewing state in her summary, and it's obvious by her summary. She's still in the zone. The data is still pouring through her. Whereas in a lot of I would say nearly every other summary that I've seen, not from this group, but just in general in the remote viewing community, when people are doing their summaries, they've broken contact. Now they're doing analysis. Now they're doing inference. And so they're not holding that portal open to the data. And it makes a difference. It just makes a difference. You want to still allow that room to come in for extra data. And so I think having some movement orders, some people call them, Michael, for the questions to ask, having those preset, but then also just practicing to the point where it just comes naturally. But like I said, like I think I've had 2 sessions now where on my last page, I'm like, I wish that I had a monitor, because I'm so deep in the zone that I can't even think of what a question is anymore. But like I have such good access to the data that I'm like, I can ask anything and the answer is going to come to me, because I'm just so plugged in, but I can't think of anything to ask because I'm so deep in the zone, right? So I think those are the times where having a monitor maybe would be helpful. But those are also the times where the more you practice having a set of complex questions, so that when you're in the state where you can get really complex data, you don't have to think about them. They just come to mind.
Also, if you have time to do a follow-up session, you can, in between the two, analyze your previous work and look to formulate questions or data that you actually want to attack strategically, essentially. And then when you go to your second session, that's when you can maybe pull out more information, more complexity out of that, because you've kind of combined both the intellect and the psychic aspect.
Do you mean like as a retask? You would kind of look at the session and then kind of see what new angle you wanted to take for it?
Yeah, you can always retask yourself for sure. But you could also just look at your session work and say, this piece was interesting to me, but I really don't understand its purpose or function or relevance to the target. And maybe that, you've got 2 or 3 pieces, right? So you kind of formulate some questions around those, like, well, I got a structure, but is it on land? Is it on water? Is it in the air? Is it, some of these things might come up after the session, and you can go back in and kind of just go into your protocols and start asking those questions for those particular elements to see what more you can draw out.
Yeah, you don't need to be retasked to do a second session. So if you haven't had feedback yet, if you do a session, you haven't had feedback, and there's something that's kind of nagging you, like, oh, there was something on that one page that I still don't really know, but it felt like there was more there. You can always just do another session, either on the target ID that you were given for the first one. You can just work a second session on that one, or you can give yourself a new target ID and, like David is saying, retask yourself. Like, okay, Michael, give me more about the structure that I described in that last session, right? And then you just do it, and it works.
Unbelievable.
And then for the people in chat, hello everyone in chat. We know you're there. We're paying attention. A few things that are coming out. Vlad is finding your sessions amazing, and I agree with him. You guys did amazing work. And it's my remote viewing journey. I think, Patrick, maybe that's to you, saying that the way you're describing your ideas, searching for purpose of the target, it's a really nice way of using your remote viewing toolkit. And Vlad, I think, makes a good point, assuming the mirror alters the energy vortex around the body described by Ibrahim Karim's biogeometry. And I think, so that ties in again with the ether as it's described by the Russians is more of a consciousness information field that humans interact with. And so that would fit in with what Vlad is mentioning.
Great.
And Manfred Kampf, hello. He says the remote viewer can be anywhere and any when. Correct. Definitely. And then B was saying she'd like to hear personal experiences with the Kozyrev mirror from Sasha. Maybe at some point I might make a video about it. I think.
Nice.
But I think there are some things that are talked about in public about how they work and why they work, and there are some things that are not talked about that I think are probably more important. And so I don't think I would recommend anyone just kind of put the time and money into building one for themselves unless they've done a lot of research into it and maybe are remote viewers or something, because I think it's a big project to undertake. But yeah. So shall we move to the next target?
Actually, yes. Can I add one more thing that's actually a nice bridge between the targets here?
Yes.
I did the session work on an airplane.
No.
Which is in a way, sort of shaped like a Kozyrev mirror. So I just thought that was interesting too.
Definitely. And that's why I didn't think of it at the time. But when I saw some of the sessions, I was like, oh yeah, I can see there's a little bit of displacement because an airplane is very much, it's an aluminum cylinder. I know an engineer who worked in the Canadian prairies, and he was an aerospace engineer. And so a lot of the hangars, I guess, are basically just these big aluminum structures. And he was saying that the engineers found that they would often have converging designs. They would be each working on some aspect of a project and just on their own, kind of not necessarily the most social people. And then they would come together for the meetings and they'd be like, oh, we converged on very similar, the same solutions to kind of similar problems or very different problems, but it was just that kind of convergence. And he was saying like he thought it did have something to do with they're in this kind of aluminum cylinder-like building structure. And that seemed to kind of make it easier for them, a little bit of a telepathic connection to some extent.
Very
It would be
cool.
interesting. It would be interesting to talk to flight attendants because the pilots are kind of in the cockpit, but the flight attendants are walking up and down that cylinder, and it'd be interesting to see if they kind of start picking up on like who's the patient or who's the passenger who's going to give you trouble and who's the one who's going to be nice. Do they start picking up on those kinds of things more easily? So, okay.
Good idea.
Let me see if I can. There we go. Good. Can we see my screen? Yes, we can, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the second target, well, actually this one, I put the Kozyrev as the complex advanced because I thought if people do it as the simple, straightforward one, they might just get just metal cylinder and that might be boring for them if they're not able to kind of access the other layer of meaning. So then the disappearance of flight MH370 technically could have been thought of as the more complex one, but I actually think it's a simpler one. There's so much more to access, and it doesn't matter what your interests are, you'll probably be able to find something in the target that interests you enough that it'll help you get to the target data. So, and then here again, the retask was basically for people who did get a retask on this one, it was this expansion of the details in your first sessions. I think everybody knows about the flight, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, the disappearance. 239 people were on board and they all disappeared. There was a lot of amazing data. So Chris, you had kind of the shape of the metal fins, the wings, that sense of metallic taste. And I like to see that because I also pick up on the taste. A lot of my sensory data comes in as taste. So I thought that was nice that you had that as well. So you really had the shape coming through from the very beginning. And this sketch that you had, I thought that was kind of, it was good, is this oval. Claudia, I wanted to tell you this. I didn't put my image in this, but we can show the video that David and I did on this target at the end of the live stream. I have nearly the exact same visit, this shape.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
I also thought, what is it? I thought, is it a crown? But probably it's a splash, because that was what I wrote. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just thought it was so funny because I had the exact same shape and then the kind of motion and lines coming off of it. Michael, you had that sense of turbulence, and I thought it was interesting because at the beginning of your session, you had something disarray, fluidics. That's a very nice word. And then you had turbulence, but you scratched it out. And I thought, I'll have to remind him, never remove data from your session. Add data, never remove data. Because if something comes through, even if you can't make sense of it, or you're like, oh, that's not quite right, correct it, add to it, but don't take away. But then I saw that later in your session, you did put down the word turbulence. So I was glad because I was like, yeah, that's good.
I moved it to the AOL section, which I think just tells me that I shouldn't be making an opinion about what's AOL and what's not until like maybe after or data gets brought together.
And you know, I don't know that it is an AOL. I think it's just good data that comes through. You know, when I think of AOL, I think if you're early on in your session and you're starting to see metal pieces and some kind of a geometrical structure, an AOL to me would be, oh, it must be the Eiffel Tower.
Okay.
Right. But I think turbulence, I would just consider that good data coming through. Chris, you had AOL accident, and I thought that was really good data that it's an accident, because it's a plane that disappeared. And you also, again, for this one, Chris, with the metallic struts, I guess, support beams at the top of this structure, this high structure, tall structure over water. In David's session, he also had something very, very similar to this drawing that you have with the metallic struts at the top. And I think in his, it was, David, was it where you have maybe the projectile coming through? Is that maybe where that sketch was? I just remembered seeing it in your session.
It could have been that one that you're referring to. Yeah, I had layers and there was buckling, something, a projectile or a force basically caused them to collapse. Maybe that's what you're thinking of.
Yeah, so I thought it was really nice to see Chris's data kind of matching David's and Claudia's data kind of matching mine. It was just nice little winks of reality. And Chris, I put this up here. You had this kind of minimalist, squarish, small, like a white area. I actually thought of the inside of the plane, and through your session work, there are a few other places where you have that concept, the claustrophobia of that white space. And I did think maybe that's the inside of the plane, even though you have it as a square.
Yeah, I had it multiple times that it was like a room that's empty, where there was not much and you couldn't get out easily.
Yes. And then Yana, she also submitted a summary of her session. She submitted a session, but it wasn't in English, and so I started cracking down a little bit on trying to get people to meet the criteria, the submission criteria, so that it's easier for me to do the analysis. But in her summary that she sent, she has a structure is flat, wide, angular, elongated, below, above, round, oval. She's describing a plane, and I thought that was really nice to see in her summary. She has it as metallic gray, silver shimmering, and standing in one place. So I thought that was really good data that she had in her summary that matched some of the data that you guys were picking up on in your sessions. She also had the water bios, wavy, liquid green, foaming, white, blue, bubbling. A lot of you picked up on the water aspect. So Chris, you had fish, ocean, waves, but also blood in the water. And that's something that I've seen in other people's session on the MH370. Who's this? John Kelly is, I don't know if he was going to join us or not. I did send him the email though, but I just realized he's not here. But he had water, that motif of water rushing through. And Claudia, you had the force of nature, water moving, foam, white. And Chris as well, you have the liquid dropping, wet. So everyone's kind of picking up on the water. Dutch Patrick has a boat in an enclosed space and something going on there. And Claudia, your lighthouse, I thought, at first I thought, okay, well, this rescue team would have been searching for the planes. So they would have had a beacon of light that they were flooding the ocean water with this light, looking for anything they could find, survivors or parts of the plane. And in my session, I also had this beacon of light shining on the water. And so I thought it was interesting that you had that as a lighthouse, and someone else did as well, but we'll get to it later here. But then there's a theory about the plane having been brought to, Diego Garcia Island, and they have this structure here on that island by the water. I think maybe this is perhaps what is being described. So that's, go ahead.
Yeah, well, what I thought for myself, because I have seen so many YouTube films of this subject the last few days, and there was one of Mentor pilots. This guy is a pilot himself, and he gave a new location based on some kind of radio waves newly discovered. And if you look at that point and then go back to the Western Australia coast, then I found all these things I mentioned later in my sketch, like the human footprint, because I had to do this footprint. And that was fossilized, there, and all these kind of things. These stinky guano, the paintings in the cave. This, I for myself thought, this is all the western coast of Australia. So
Interesting.
that's how I. And there was one thing, because I saw your film on the 21st of April, something like that. You talked about, and then you saw a whale.
Yes.
Yes. And what I saw where the guano was, because I had this stinky smell, there is a how do you call it? Like a harbor? An isle, and there are the most whales of the world concentrated. Shark Bay, it's called. So I had to think about your whale then.
I'm going to have to look. You'll have to send us a link to that video. I want to see that now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, I'll do.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
And so you had, I think that was really good data. The waves, the seas, everyone was picking up on the ocean. So that was really nice to see in your sessions. And then we had some really nice site sketches. Chris, you have the human one, and then the group of humans, some energetic something, and then water coming out.
I think we lost the PowerPoint, no?
Oh,
yeah.
Or is it just me?
No, you're right.
No,
Thank you.
too.
Thank you for letting me know. So so here you have the water. You have some kind of an energetic something, and then the water gushing. It really just reminded me of the other data that I've seen on this target, and the data that I got, and the data that David got, the water gushing through. So I thought that was nice in your sketch. And the two structures. So I don't know if you had a chance to see David and I, our video on our sessions for this target that we did 2 years ago now. But we did pick up on the plane and then also the rescue ships. And I think this is also what you're picking up on, maybe. John Kelly had, again, I think this is the rescue ships. He has the people here. And then he has this path here. And Chris, I think it was you that had the 4-shaped path for the other target, but I think there was a bit of a displacement. And on this island, Diego Garcia, there's an airport. And the island is really just the outer edges of an island with this inner sunken, flooded inside or middle. And so it's basically just tops of mountainous terrain. And they have a landing strip. And I thought, yeah, I can see it in John Kelly's data, this kind of landing strip here. And he also had the rescue ships. And Michael, you had ships at sea with military. I think that those are the rescue ships that the military sent out to find the MH370. Chris, you were picking up on that the people were not at ease. And we'll come back to that a little bit later, the distress. And Yana had this destination has structure, land, water, bio, and event. And I thought that's in her summary. And I thought that was really good that she had the main elements of the target in her summary. So I thought that was good data. So here, now, I just found out about this theory of Diego Garcia while I was doing analysis of your work. So I'm not suggesting that this is where the plane was taken. Claudia, I'm looking forward to seeing the theory for Australia as the destination.
Yeah, I printed it out. My printer is bad. But if you hear is Western Australia, there is the new point, which he said he thought it would be in that area.
Okay.
So I'll send you the link.
Yeah, send us the link. So a lot of these theories, and this is something that David and I talked about in our video, was especially because we did this back in 2022. So we were saying we were picking up data related to the target, but we weren't necessarily at the point yet of saying this is the theory that describes what actually happened. It was just, these are this is the information. These are the theories that are maybe floating around. And I think that's how I'm treating the Diego Garcia data. Some of your data matches the Diego Garcia Island targets, but that doesn't mean I believe that it went there. I'm just saying it's one of the theories that exists, and I think that I see some supportive data in your sessions, and I just find that interesting. It's not proof, it's just interesting. I think you would need more evidence to maybe consider it more deeply, but I think it was kind of stunning. So here we have Dutch Patrick, and again he has a landing strip.
Oh, we lost the PowerPoint.
Oh,
Screen, yeah.
sorry. There we go. I changed the view. Sorry. So here you can see he has the landing strip on kind of a mountaintop. And again, that really here in this image, this is where the landing strip is, on the top of the mountaintops that are above water for this Diego Garcia. So basically it's a US military base in the Indian Ocean. And you can see here in this image, it's just mountainous terrain sticking out of the middle of the ocean. And they just put they put an airport there, and that's what it is. And so Dutch Patrick had basic physics trying out a test procedure. And David, you also had that idea of a military test of some kind, I think, right? And then here, another data point I thought was fascinating and a good match to ours was he had rib that was, I think, revealed by erosion. And I also had the ribs of the plane on a mountaintop that were being eroded away. And so I thought that was really nice data match, especially in time, because Dutch Patrick is basically matching my data from 2 years ago. I thought that was really interesting. Yeah.
Just I have a previous engagement, so I need to go.
Yes.
But it was good to see everybody's work, and appreciate everybody contributing.
Thank you for being here, David. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for taking care of chat.
No.
Bye.
Bye. And so here we have Chris. You have a tube flowing motion. John Kelly has this, again, like Claudia, your oval kind of shape with the lines coming off of it. This is Michael. You have the flow moving downwards. Chris has something flowing in. And then Dutch Patrick has motion downward onto a square-like plate. And he also has turbulence, which matches Michael's data, the turbulence. But I wanted to talk about this one in particular. Dutch Patrick and Chris, this square-like shape with something flowing in, and on Patrick's is flowing downward. I have the exact same imagery. I had the exact same descriptors. I described it as motion downward, and I had a square, and then later in my session, I could feel water gushing downward. And this tube, the motion downward, I'm wondering if this is the plane that's kind of moving downward. So that's something. And I'm just going to make sure that there aren't any comments that yeah, okay. Did anybody want to say something about this, about what they were picking up on here? Because I think this is definitely an important part of the target for everyone to be picking up on it in this way, very similar imagery.
Just wanted to say something maybe not related to the data, but we actually don't really know how remote viewing works. And this particular target, there's a lot of theories. So it's always fun to see all of the data come in, because you have data that corroborates a bunch of different theories, but there's only one truth in the end. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up, because in the end, I'm not sure that remote viewing always tells the truth. I think you view what exists as ideas or information, but it's not always the actual truth. So it's yeah, that's a big topic. I mean, I guess we could do a full 2 hours on that, but
yes, and it's something some remote viewers do acquire an ability to tell. So in 2022, I wasn't there yet. I couldn't tell the difference between data related to the target and the true story of what really happened. But now I can see, for some things, I'm able to feel like, oh, this feels like Hollywood, or it feels like a movie scene, or there's something about this that feels fanciful. Fanciful is a word I don't use in my normal everyday life, but I've had it come through in sessions where the data ends up being a theory that is unsupported, right? And so I think you're 100% correct, and remote viewers really have to keep that in mind, that you might be describing theories, but not necessarily saying that that theory is the correct one.
That would be a fun trial to do. Like do quick sessions, like 100 sessions, where you in the end need to define, was it a real target or was it the fake targets just made up by the tasker, and see the results. That could be pretty interesting.
That would be very easy, right? Just throw in some fictional targets with some real ones and see who can pick up on it and how it comes through. And as a remote viewer, that's the thing. That's why it's important to do a lot of practice, because you need to figure out for yourself. Like I was saying, the word fanciful. Now I know if I get the word fanciful, I need to probe that a little bit harder, because it's probably not true, but it is data that exists about something, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's good to learn your own patterns. So John Kelly had the oval with the lines. And again, I think it's really similar to the underlying pattern in yours, Claudia, and in mine as well. And then I saw that this...
Not mine? From John.
Yes, your oval, your falling oval. But then I found this is a pin that pilots wear. Pilot's wings. It's a brooch that they wear to indicate, I don't know, that they're a pilot. And I thought that was also an interesting correlation with John Kelly's data. So he's picking up on the plane aspect of it, and that there's a pilot involved. It also could be, and again, I'm just saying, we're just talking about the theories that are out there, but there's the video with the orbs. And I wonder for John Kelly, is it possible that he was he looking at the pilot's wings, or was he looking at the orbs? Was there an overlay? Was he looking at both of those things at the same time? It's interesting. I'm not quite sure. And Chris, I put this here as well. You had something opening with a flower-like shape in its center. I wasn't too sure how to fit that in, but I thought it was interesting data. And so here, Irish Patrick, you had this orange-red light. You weren't the only one. So Chris also had this orange light, an omnipresent dim orange light. And so I think that there's something about that. And I think it might tie into the lighthouse that Claudia saw and the light beacon that I saw. I don't know if it's the search and rescue team. They had light on the water for I don't know how long, if it's something related to that or if it's something else. But Chris, you also had an explosion of light or energy. And Dutch Patrick had a battery-like device. And I thought that was interesting, because one of the theories is that there were lithium batteries that ignited on the plane. And the convection of heat Michael had. And I thought, there's a little bit of data that might support the idea of the lithium batteries exploding, or I don't know, they started a fire. I think there's some data to support that, but not enough for me to take it further than that. I did think it was interesting, Irish Patrick, you had the sun coming through as an AOL, and Dutch Patrick had AOL China's artificial sun. So because of the context in which it came, I think there's more to this than just there's an orange light on the rescue ship. I think that we're talking about something a little bit more complex, because for Dutch Patrick, it came through with this torus-like shape. I'm wondering if that's related to the orbs. He had this kind of structure. If you watch the orb video, they move in this kind of circular pattern that's very closely resembles this. Chris, you had this cloudy kind of cloud shape. And it kind of, to me, reminded me a little bit of Irish Patrick's blotchy red shape in the darkness. So I'm not sure if you guys are picking up in the orbs or something else, but there's definitely correlation amongst these items in your sessions for speculation. And then Chris, you were also really picking up on the health of the people, that they were having trouble breathing, that their lungs, and in David's session, he had a bilocation where he started coughing on smoke. And so I thought that was, again, that interesting tie-in across 2 years of data, of the coughing, the breathing problems, the lungs, in unease in the internal organs, hospital. Dutch Patrick had operating room. Chris, you had ambulance. So again, there's this idea of people are in distress. They're not doing well. They're finding it hard to breathe. So that was really nice correlations between your data, Dutch Patrick's data, and David's data. And then here, Michael, you had people, engineers, technicians, some low tech. So there were engineers amongst the passengers that were developing a system for a plane to hide from radar. And that's one of the theories about why that plane disappeared. So I thought it was interesting that you picked up on those people. Chris, you had someone making an announcement to the group, shouting fear, unhappy people, crying, incomprehension. So I'm not sure if if the passengers were taken somewhere else and were taken off the plane, or something happened to them there, or if this is maybe the announcement that was made to the families of the passengers. I'm not really sure about that. A couple of you picked up on palm trees, and so that ties into the Diego Garcia theory. Claudia, you have the indigenous people, and that ties into the Diego Garcia, definitely. Somewhere abandoned, far from the civilized world, that's a match for that theory. Feels a bit claustrophobic. It's just it's this tiny ring of like mountaintops, and choosing between two options. That's something that I thought, if we had had more time, I might have retasked you to tell me more about what the two options were, because that might have given us more information about what happened.
Okay, I don't know for now. I don't know why I wrote it down.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then here we have Dutch Patrick has this kind of bunker-like structure, circular and then solid. And Michael, you also had this platform in the mountains. I was wondering if maybe the landing strip at Diego Garcia Island, I'm not sure if that, because these are mountaintops, so I'm not really sure if that's a good fit for the data, or if there's a better fit for the data.
It's also thinking could mean like the platform itself, I mean, has like an exit on it, and it could also just be like the plane at the bottom of the sea too, where there's also like hilly terrain and stuff. So
yes, and one of the theories is that the plane crashed south of where the rescue teams were looking, and in that area there are mountains on the ocean bed in that area. So a lot of us had mountains and the ribs of the plane and the mountaintop, and so I do wonder that as well. Did it crash in that area of the ocean and settle down on these undersea mountains? You had a question about timelines, schedules of events. I think that there's relevance there in relation to some of the more alien UFO kind of theories. The stones in a circle, I don't know if you've had time to watch my video with David about our sessions, but I also had the stone circle, and it seemed very meaningful in terms of the deaths of all these people at the same time, and that portal opening up. And the opening of a door. So one of the things, so David and I both had the plane door opening and water gushing in through the opening plane door. But then I also had this other door, this portal door that I think is more associated with the death, the passing of all these people at the same time. And some of the other viewers in my HRVG group, because we did that, a few of us were asked to do that target for Dick Allgaier. And a few of the other people also had the doorway, the portal kind of doorway, not the plain doorway, but this other door. So I thought that was kind of cool. Oops, discard. And so what are your thoughts about that?
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
I ended one of my summaries by "It's sad, but there is hope." So maybe there is some survivors on an island somewhere. We can only wish that for them.
Yeah.
Well, if you listen to the mentor pilot, he is a pilot himself, and he said that basically everything was shut down when he did a manual turn. So these people must have been suffocated very quickly, within 20 minutes. So if you listen to him, then it was only the pilot and the second guy
Who would have survived longer? And then if it was a fire of the lithium batteries, then the cabin filling up with smoke, people would have inhaled smoke, and then that makes people pass out, lack of oxygen. If you're hearing, Chris, if you're hearing thumping, that's there. Yeah, someone upstairs is jumping on a trampoline and it's coming through my ceiling. So the noise is not on your end, it's on mine. And so let's see what the people in chat. Vlad is asking, did the plane crash, explode, or transition into another space-time, more advanced Philadelphia experiment? There is data, I think, that does support that, and just having conversations with other kind of advanced remote viewers who are able to get that extra kind of layer of information. There's a possibility, but the problem is that I don't know if you guys are following the Ashton Forbes YouTuber, but he's being given whistleblower data, and it's creating all this data about these orbs and about teleportation, that the US government has developed teleportation technology and they were testing it. And so it's hard to know, because that data showing up in remote viewing sessions, it's like Chris was saying, is that because that's being discussed, or is that because that technology was used?
Yeah.
We don't know yet, because we don't have enough data, and we don't have the remote viewers who maybe have more practice in figuring out if their data is what we would consider true, or if it's what we would consider just stories that are being shared about it. Was that target too hard? Was it harder than the Kozyrev? Was it easier? What did you guys think?
I feel like
I think I was, that was the very first target I think I'd done after, I think I was sick for about a couple of weeks. So I'd done it because it was coming to the deadline. So I wanted to hand something in. So it's a pity, because it's kind of one I would have been really interested in looking at,
Yeah. I would say that, for me, I feel like MH370 is more like a more advanced target, because I think the Kozyrev device is super interesting, and it's also like not really well known as well. So there's not many avenues for information and speculation and so on, whereas MH370 has so much public consciousness and so much controversial theories around it that, like, he really knows like what the information we're pulling, where is it actually coming from, So I feel like it's maybe a bit more of an opportunity to learn, develop like more finer discernment about like what's the truth versus what's maybe popular opinion, or what like this pet theory says about it, and so on.
Well, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, what I found striking, that I saw this cactus, the round one with all the spikes.
Yeah.
And I looked for it then in Western Australia. And then I noticed that it is brought from America to there. So it's pest. It is pest control, these spiky cactuses. So I think, oh, okay, well, I found it strange, but I really had to draw this. So, okay, it was very interesting, because I really had looked at a lot of MH370 videos, and there were a lot of theories, what you say. So,
yes.
Yeah.
I think that's the value in practicing these kinds of targets, so that you can, over time, figure out if you have the ability, and then how the data comes through to differentiate the theories from, and even, you know, the term truth, you know, sometimes we mistake for truth what most people believe, and that's not necessarily true. So you have to be careful if you think, okay, this is how it comes through me when it's truth. But are you sure that that's true?
No, we never know. No, unless we find it.
You know, I think of the diameter of the proton was known and established and was published in all the science textbooks, and everybody knew what it was, and that was truth. And if you had come back with that number in your remote viewing session, that would have been truth. And then they developed more advanced tech, more advanced ways of measuring the proton, and they were like, oh, oops, we were wrong by like orders of magnitude. I think they were 150% off the actual diameter. And so then that was truth for a couple decades, and it was science truth. It was in all the science textbooks, but it was a lie. So if you had done a remote viewing session and gotten their data, you would have thought, oh, this is how it feels when I get true data. No. So that's why you have to be really careful when you're trying to figure out, are you remote viewing something true or just data that's related to the target? The orbs are related to the target now because there's a whole conversation about the orbs. And so when I got, you know, the orbs in my session, to me, it doesn't tell me that the orbs are real. It doesn't tell me that the footage is real. It doesn't tell me that aliens are involved or the US has teleportation tech. It just tells me that that story exists in the data stream.
Yeah. But if you look at the photo with the orbs,
yeah,
then you see the plain green, and at the bottom in the belly, it's red. So probably where the lithium batteries are.
Yes.
So I thought, okay, yeah.
It seems like maybe there's something to that one.
Yeah.
Patrick, I appreciate that you did a session even though you were sick. I was grateful for that. And I wanted to say, you know, usually I'm a little bit more flexible with the deadlines as long as you submit them before I give feedback, right? Once I give feedback, then it's closed.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
But for this one, David and I wanted to get our video out, and it was all edited and was ready to go. And so I just said, okay, I'm closing it on Sunday because I didn't want to contaminate you. I didn't want you guys to be submitting sessions after David and I had published our video, because I thought as well, if you see our video on MH370 and you start getting a plane crash, you're going to think that your data, you're going to think, oh, it's because I just watched their video. And I thought that's going to cause a problem for the viewers.
And what about
this topic?
Sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
There was also a target number from Jeff.
Yes, and so, but a few people didn't find. So I'm going to be honest, I was a little bit confused because one of the reasons, the criteria for submitting to the live stream is that you have to pay $1 in order to be in the Patreon tier, live stream tier at a minimum. So you can either, on our Patreon, we have a couple different tiers. We have a free tier, a $1 tier, and a $7 tier. And the reason I put the $1 tier was for two reasons. Well, there's two main issues I was concerned about. One, I didn't want scammers just sending in garbage data. And I thought just charging them $1 will dissuade scammers. And I didn't want children either, because I just want it to be over 18, obviously, because I don't want to work. Like, I wouldn't be able to give MH370 if there maybe were children, because David and I both picked up on death, and he bilocated to the bodies and decaying. And so I was like, that you can't give targets to children. You have to be so careful. But then the other thing was that if you're subscribed to that level, you should get notifications when I post the targets, because when I have the targets for the next live stream, I put them up on our Patreon. And so by being a member of the $1 tier, you get an email notification. But for some reason, I don't know what went wrong, but a few of you didn't get it until a week in. And then some people were sick. And so everyone kind of started late, and not enough people did just target to reveal it. So what Jeff and I thought was, we'll just give you guys until the May live stream. So we'll give you guys another month.
Oh, okay.
If you've done a session, you can do a second one if you want to. You don't have to. We have the one. I haven't talked to Jeff to know if he's doing retaskings on that one, but that one's just still open. So don't share your session with others because we'd like to keep it clean. Jeff, I don't know if you can see us or hear us because you're buffering. So maybe I'm talking to future Jeff who watches the video later when he has a stronger internet connection. But Jeff, we should probably talk about that for the retaskings or how you want to treat that. But so if you do want to work Jeff's session, it's still open.
Okay.
And then for our next live stream, I'm thinking sometimes when you give people too much time, then they procrastinate and then they run out of time, right? But sometimes if other things are going on, then people just don't have time. Like you're saying, Patrick, like especially for these two, I think there are some of you that would really have liked to have been able to do more work on these targets because they were maybe more personally interesting. And so I was thinking maybe we'll give it 6 weeks until the next live stream instead of just giving 4 weeks. What do you guys think?
Yeah, whatever works for you now.
For me, it would work better to have it in 6 weeks because analysis, like the last, my last week it starts being focused on sending you guys emails, making sure the things are done, kind of just administering all of that stuff, and then getting your sessions and doing all of that. And so for me, I wouldn't mind doing that every 6 weeks instead of every 4, but will it give you too much time and then you'll forget and then you'll think, oh, I have so much time, I'll do it next week. And then the next thing you know, you missed the deadline.
Then you can maybe impose deadlines. Huh? So for the first target, you give 3 weeks. And for the second one, it's the 3 weeks after. So everyone has to start with the first one and they cannot choose the order. Maybe that's easier.
That's a good idea. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think so. Because, I mean, you have to do so much work on it. So, and 4 weeks, we all know nowadays 4 weeks is nothing. So, yeah, I would say do that then, 6 weeks. And then what Chris proposes with 2 different deadlines.
Yes.
Then it's also not mingling in my head because sometimes I'm afraid that the targets are crossing over, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Placement. So Cody is in chat. He gives a thumbs up to that idea. So wonderful, because Cody didn't have a chance, unfortunately, this one to submit sessions. And Vlad is happy with seeing your work. And It's My Remote Viewing Journey says, he always thought that any impressions received is only my own interpretation of the target, my own truth. I wouldn't know what others would interpret for the same data. I think that's the thing. That's why the group work is important to see, because then you can see that you might think like, oh, I'm getting this weird impression. Yeah, but so did 3 other people in the group. Yeah. So then you kind of know like, oh, there's something there. Like the sun, the fact that and also who it was, like Patrick, the fact that it was you and Dutch Patrick that both picked up on the artificial sun or these orbs as suns. To me, that's meaningful because your data is usually different in you're both you both pick up a lot of conceptual data, but it usually has a slightly different flavor to it. And so when I saw you both describe that with the same words, that really stood out to me. And so I think for It's My Remote Viewing Journey, feel free to participate in next month's live stream and see how your data ends up correlating with the group. How are you guys finding any group effects? Are you feeling that your work is enhanced by participating in the group? Were these targets maybe just a little bit more challenging? Welcome back, Jeff.
I think it's a bit more challenging. I find that I have better results like in the globality on boring targets, unfortunately. But like just the location, I sometimes nail it really good. Here there's a lot of stuff happening, so it's more difficult. But yeah, it's really cool exercise. And working in group is really nice because you really see what others perceived and you can correlate data. And yeah, I really like that.
Nice. Jeff, you're muted. Yes, you're mute. Or I can. You're very, very low. I can hear you.
Hold on, maybe
There you
now.
go. Yeah.
Okay. I have been having lots of technology issues this week, including 2 computers that are no longer working for whatever reason.
Oh no.
So, an internet connection going in and out when my neighbors are working fine. So it's not the service provider. Don't know what's going on there. But yes, I will definitely have a retasking for the few people that have submitted data already, which everyone has basically had has clearly had good good target contact so far.
Okay.
Good. And I'm blind to Jeff's target. So when you send them to me, I'm sending them to Jeff. I was going to work it, but then I saw someone sent me their session to send to Jeff, and when I opened the email to like forward it to Jeff, I saw the first page of the PDF, and I was like, oh no.
Too late.
Yeah, because it's just enough, right, that it gets into your subconscious, and
exactly.
You can't work it.
I have one remark about the Notion thing, because I checked my app, and then the Patreon was out, so I had no news from it. So I think I've made it now as if I get the notification.
Oh, good.
So let's see if maybe that was the issue by everyone, on the phone.
Oh, maybe you have to opt in for the notifications for the Patreon.
Yes, I did now.
Okay. So yeah, if you didn't get the notification earlier this month, then maybe just check the Patreon to make sure that you have that setting set up. We try not to spam. Our Patreon is more remote viewing focused. Our YouTube channel is remote viewing results, and so, but we don't put any we try not to put any fluff, I guess, on our Patreon. But at the same time, we don't want to not put anything. So we're kind of thinking like, should we have blog posts on our Patreon? So feel free to let us know if you guys want to see more stuff like that. But for the live stream, yeah. I also posted it on Facebook, but I know not everybody's on Facebook. So that's why I think Patreon's probably the best.
Yes, well, I am on Facebook, but somehow, they kick you out of sometimes groups or whatever. You never know what they do. So anyway, I'm now aware, so I will check in also.
Yeah, and as well for me, because I might want to have the next batch of targets out at the end of in a week, but sometimes life interferes, and then maybe it'll be a week and a half or whatever. But I'll do my best to get those out. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. You guys did great work again.
Thank you for analyzing.
Thank you. Yeah. Great target.
I felt like there was a little bit less analysis this time because it was more presentation of the data. But I think partly because everyone kind of knows MH370 at this point, right? And the Kozyrev mirrors, I think I encourage people to do their own research on that one because it's really fascinating.
Yeah. There's not so much, but it's very interesting.
Yes.
Cool target.
What resources would you recommend on Kozyrev mirrors, Sasha?
I would recommend going to Google Translate and just going through Russian websites and reading Russian research papers that have come out by Nikolai Kozyrev. But I can send you some as well. He had really interesting research on I'm blanking on the word, pendulums and time and temperature, but also it gyrates.
Gyroscope, torsion fields.
Yes. Gyroscopes, is that the word? And so if you put it into Google Translate into Russian, do a Google search, and then translate it back into English, because unfortunately the better sources are in Russian. And I wanted to say this. So I watched the original Russian documentary about it, and then I saw Mr. Mythos did an episode about the Kozyrev mirror, and the Y-Files did an episode, and both Mr. Mythos and the Y-Files we're talking about how people felt terror when they were near it, and they felt so afraid, and they felt like there was dark shadows in it, and that is not true, because that is not at all what the original Russian documentary talked about. There was no mention of terror, of feelings of terror. There was no mention of these evil, shadowy figures in the mirror, Kozyrev mirror. There was none of that. So it looks to me like at some point between the original Russian video coming out, being translated into English, and then being picked up by these bigger channels, there was an insertion of propaganda to make people afraid. And that's partly why I built my own, because I was like, why are they trying to make us afraid of Kozyrev mirrors in the English language world, right? So that's why I say I think at this point it's better to try to get original Russian sources and then just translate them if you can.
Yeah.
I was going to either sell them or sell time in them, like have a wellness center and have my Kozyrev mirrors, and then people could come, kind of like a flotation tank. You could come and spend time in my Kozyrev mirrors. But then two things happened. One, I realized if I did it, I would probably be disappeared. And I'm not ready to be disappeared yet. Jeff, I was thinking, what kind of research were you doing this week? And maybe that's why all of a sudden your internet's not working.
Yeah. I was also thinking about this. I thought this is the mirrors. And yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And then the other reason was I realized that I don't think everyone is ready for that. I think for some people it might be too destabilizing, or
yeah.
Yeah. I think it's better to earn a certain level of ability, because when you earn that ability, it also changes how you think. And so then by the time you're at that level, you're a little bit more prepared for it. It's what we were talking about last time, where people don't like to think that you can read their thoughts. So they'd rather say that it's impossible. Remote viewing is impossible, because they want it to be impossible, because otherwise there's a risk that you're going to hear what they're thinking. And so I think for those kinds of people, if you shock them, if you put them in a device and all of a sudden they're seeing things that challenge their beliefs, I think that it can be a little bit too much for them, right?
Mm.
And also just it's huge, it's expensive. So even renting space to put one in, to have visitors come into it would be hard. And essentially though, I think if you dabble in that too much, you get disappeared. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah. I thought of that also. Yeah. What will happen if you're alone and you're in it? And yeah.
I think that the men in black come knocking at your door.
Yeah, I think so too. For sure. But there was a Bulgarian guy who is making these things and shipping them to Europe and US. And he mentioned also the transport costs for Holland. So this meant that he had shipped one to Holland. So I'm very curious, you know who that was. And they have it in a wellness center in Bulgaria. Yeah. And also the Wilhelm
Reich.
Reich organ machine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But see what happened to him. His lab mysteriously.
Yeah, exactly.
And was he the one that was sent to prison on false charges right after he burned down his lab?
I think the FDA took him to task on saying orgone doesn't exist, so this devices are all fraudulent or whatever. And then he says, you know what, like this federal court's not a place to discuss whether a scientific fact is true or not, but they didn't side with that, but he continued anyway, and then they put him in jail.
Yeah, I worried a little bit about that. I just thought, it's probably not worth the risk of getting on the wrong side of some of these entities. And Claudia, the Bulgarian, did he also build Giotto rings? Was it him? There's this one guy on Vimeo, Eastern European, and he was a doctor. He built some Giotto rings, which are very similar, except that there's copper involved and temperature changes.
I don't think so. I think this is just a guy with well, because you made the photos, there was a circular one on wheels.
Yes.
And that one he is making.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's also, well, because there's Alexander, or like the Russian version of the name Alexander, Trofimov, and he presented at one of the Society for Scientific Exploration. So they're loosely related to the remote viewing community because they do scientific research on psi and on psychic kind of things. And he presented some of the data from his Kozyrev machines at that conference and then disappeared off the face of the English speaking world forever.
No.
Yeah. So I reached out to him in Russia. And so, but I knew right away, like, now my email is flagged. And then, of course, then we go to war with Russia. So it's like, you kind of have to pick a side, right? I'm Canadian, but I know that emailing back and forth to Russia about these machines is probably not.
They're looking at everything because I do textile. I get commission. And there is a Dutch brand called Moscow. So, but they write it MSCW. But on the invoice, which I sent to Istanbul, I said Moscow because I did not get my money. Nothing. I did not get my money. I had to change my invoice 3 times. Really, big brother is watching you.
I know that. I know, and I shouldn't have said it on this live stream, but it's out there, whatever. But I do know I have some concerns about that a little. Maybe I'll edit this part out of the live stream later.
Oh yeah. Okay, bye. Yeah. Cut it off.
Yeah, exactly. But for you as a group of remote viewers, I think that there are some things you can do that make you a better remote viewer or that help you become a better remote viewer, but it's not like a magic pill. It's just that I think it can open you up a little bit, and then you still have to do the work. But just by being a little bit more open, maybe it's easier to get results from the work that you're doing. I don't know, something along those lines. David's going to be like, Sasha, please trim out the last hour.
Well, it is interesting to make a list with all these kind of questions which you can ask yourself. That's a good one, because, yeah. Okay, well.
Yeah, and so for remote viewing, I think it's the same. I think do your best, share your best data, but also be aware of what targets you're working and where you're putting that information out. And also what I was thinking for the May live stream, which is actually going to be in June because it's going to be in 6 weeks. So let's just call it the June live stream. I might send everyone who wants to participate sends me an email, but you guys all just as a given. I might send everyone a personal target reference number. So you get your own target reference number. You don't share it with anybody else, and you work your session. They're all for the same target, the first one. The retaskings, like I said, usually I individualize them. But the original one, you'll have your own TRN because that prevents anyone else from messing with the targets for the live stream.
So what you mean is that we get 2? That we get then.
So instead of putting it on my announcement, so like last month, though, these are the 2 targets that you can work. Instead, I'll just email you and say, here's your target reference number for the June live stream. And I'll just send each of you an individual different target number so that only you know what it is. And then I was thinking maybe what we'll do, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but David and I, for the ones that we work for Dick, we allow the target reference number to show because they've done future forecasting group videos about them. So the target reference number is already in the public domain. But for our personal, our Mint sessions, we hide the TRN. And so that is one thing you might consider as remote viewers, especially if you're doing public work. At some point, it's a good idea to not present your target reference number. So just erase it, scratch it out, put a white rectangle in Photoshop. I don't know whatever software you have, or I don't know.
Okay, so you mean on the data which we give you?
On your sessions.
Yeah,
Yeah. So what, I don't know if you've noticed, but when I do my presentations of your work, I never have your target numbers on the pages that I share, I don't think, right? And so it's a good habit to start developing now to not share publicly your target reference number, because it just prevents people from messing around as easily with.
Okay, it's good you mention it.
Yeah. Jeff, what do you think?
I'm just so what I'm thinking. So if you're going to edit this out of the live stream, or
I don't know if I will, but
well, anyway,
we're rolling the dice.
there was an individual that we talked about potentially visiting.
Yes.
And I was researching that this week. So maybe I shouldn't go there.
I told you. That's why your computers are not working. When you should be listening for clicks when you're on Zoom or Discord.
Okay. I will not be visiting him. Okay.
Don't. So this is a thing. There are
definitely.
Now we're curious.
This
so David and I worked an interesting session project, and it touched on topics that are dangerous to talk about publicly. There's a couple topics. One of them, like, I don't know if you guys know Coast to Coast AM, the radio show about conspiracy theory things, but like whenever they do episodes on free energy, the guest gets cut off, the phone line gets cut off, they have all kinds of technical problems. And if you look at the free energy researchers in our video, I don't know if it's in the one on Patreon or the one on YouTube, but in one of our videos on David's session on sonoluminescence, I show a list of all the researchers of free energy who died under mysterious circumstances or strange but violent accidents, or they were mugged and beaten to death, but no money was taken, and so that's one topic that you like, because I've said it now, YouTube will know that I said that term, right? So maybe this will get shadow banned. So we'll see. But that's the thing. So there are some topics like that are more closely monitored. And if you're doing remote viewing on those kinds of topics, if you're discussing those topics, especially remote viewing, because you can get data that you can't get in any other way. So you have to be a little bit more aware that it's not silly people telling stories. When people say like there can be concerns about these kinds of things, like you do have to be a responsible remote viewer, and if you're accessing data that other people can't easily access, then it can, I don't know, it can put you under observation, I think. What do you guys think? Patrick, what do you think?
I agree. You just have to be careful what you're doing. I mean, you're putting information out there, you're discussing a topic that might be controversial, some secrecy around them, or I mean, they keep things secret for a reason. They don't want this in the public domain. Sometimes when stuff goes out there, there was a point in time where there was a lot of jokes about remote viewing, min hysteric goats. But I mean, that's all kind of gone out. There's too many people in the field. There's too many people working publicly. They know now that's not going to work. So these guys are creative and coming up with ways to dissuade you from getting involved.
And that's why I think they're pushing AI into remote viewing, because I think that it's an easy way to corrupt the data. Once remote viewers start using AI, they're going to lose so much data in their sessions that their sessions will probably become fairly worthless for anything other than seal claps, right? And I think it's one of the reasons they're pushing AI art into remote viewing.
Yeah, I mean, keep it clean. Keep it like, the guys in SRI done the research. They've done it. They tested it, it worked, and it works perfectly fine on its own. Yeah. So if you stick with those, if you stick with that kind of the protocols and methods, and kind of keep it kind of, kind of a clear head in yourself when you're doing this kind of stuff. Like, when you're doing esoteric targets, you cannot really tell. So you have to balance them out with kind of real world kind of targets as well. And, just kind of, I think, just be sensible about what you're doing. You'll be fine. Your work will be good, but you just have to be careful. There's so many people in this field. Like, at one moment, you'll even see remote viewers. Kind of, some people will kind of be going, well, the ET remote viewing thing is bogus, and then next thing they're working with people in the field, and you're kind of going, look, you can, you just have to make your own mind up on this stuff. This works.
It works. I think you guys are seeing that you are connecting to data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It absolutely does work, but it's a two-way street as well, so you have to be careful.
Yes.
You can go out, but just remember that something else can view you too. That's my belief.
Yeah.
And that comes from experience, not from, it's not just a notion I got.
Yes. I think you have to be aware, not let your excitement get ahead of you. The person that Jeff was referencing was someone who works in a field that, in relation to a remote viewing project, and I texted them, and the next day I texted them late at night, and the next morning I got a notification saying that because I had subscribed to this service to find them. And the next day I received a notification that they had changed their cell phone number. So I texted them. They didn't even answer the text, and they changed their number. So I was like, oh, that's okay. That's good to know. Oh, Vlad thank you, Vlad. Thank you, Vlad, so much for your contributions. Yeah, you had some good comments. So that's Vlad in chat. And I'm glad that Cody got a chance to watch as well. So yeah, so for next month, 6 weeks, I'll do what Chris suggested. I'll do one target open for 3 weeks, and then I'll close it, and the other target open for 3 weeks, and then I'll close it, something along those lines. Jeff's target is open. Jeff, do you have deadlines for that so that you can give retaskings out, or are you just going to play it by ear?
I'll play it by ear.
Okay. And then Patrick, if you want to task one the following month, that would be open for you, because I would like to see, I think it's good to get practice as a tasker. And so that's something that you guys can do. And Patrick's already, you're already known as a tasker in the community. You already have a good reputation.
I didn't know.
Yeah. And Jeff, I worked a target that Jeff tasked. It was a medical target. And the data was really shiny and really easy to access. So that's why I thought, yeah, let's have Jeff task the group. I thought that would be okay.
Sure.
I'll get your one next week.
Great.
Yeah. So I think that's all. Remember that Chris just launched his YouTube channel. And so I think he put that in the comments, but maybe we'll put the link in the description box under the video so you guys can check that out. I think it's very exciting every time a remote viewer goes out in the world and creates a new way of sharing remote viewing work. I think we need more of it. So I'm encouraging that, and I'm glad to see it. And we'll put the link down below for that. Yeah, show some support, give them a like, maybe subscribe.
I did. Yeah, I just did.
Nice. Yeah, because we have to support each other in the community. Last little thought that I wanted to share. The remote viewing community is small, and we can compete with each other and tear each other down and undermine each other. And then we will stay this really small community where you have very big fish in a very tiny pond. Or we can collaborate and expand our audiences, and the new audience members that gets become new audience members for every other remote viewing group out there. Every new person that discovers us through one of our videos, oh, what's this remote viewing thing? then it's a new audience for you and for your channels and for your projects and for your work. And so I think we should be trying really hard to support each other. Having said that, I just did this presentation. I'm like, do not use AI. And I know that there are some people in the community who are excited about using AI for remote viewing. So there still has to, but my intention is not to attack or undermine. My intention is to have these valuable conversations that I really feel need to be had for the betterment of remote viewing, right? It's not my intention to be undermining other groups in any way. It's just I do think collaborating definitely, but also sometimes critical thinking conversations or constructive analysis I think is useful.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you guys, anything you guys want to say before we kind of close it out?
No, I just mailed you the link for the video.
Yes, the MH370 Australia theory.
Yeah, from the pilot. So it's very interesting. Even I understood it, with regards to SATCOM and all these kinds of satellite and things. Very interesting. Yeah.
Thank you. So we'll put that in the description.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well,
I have to go.
yeah, me too. It's 12 o'clock, so I go back to bed.
Yeah.
Okay, good night.
Good night, guys.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Sasha.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Where exit full